Hey, everybody, and welcome to your next. I'm your host, Jerome, and I want to welcome you to another solo episode. I'm doing more and more of these, and I'm finding out that people are enjoying them. So, really grateful to have you here with me today. So, when you sell your company, everyone wants to know one thing. Hey, what'd you get for it, man? How much you cash out? You hit the lottery. What'd you get? That's the question that follows you at every dinner, every conference, every conversation with another founder. They want to know the multiple. They want to know the EBITDA. They want to know what you paid in taxes. And it's a number that gets printed in a press release, whispered in the hallways, and immortalized in the headlines. But here's the truth I've learned after working with founders who've sold for six, seven, and eight, and even nine figures. The final price is rarely the thing that determines whether they feel success after the sell. It's not the number that keeps them up at night, it's the terms, the fine print that defines how the number actually shows up in their lives. I've seen founders sign what looked like were dream deals, only to discover months later that they were living a nightmare. One sold for 30 million, but they couldn't leave the company without forfeiting half of it. Another hit their earnout target, but the buyer moved the goalposts. And one told me flat out, I thought I was selling my business. I didn't realize I was selling my peace. That's the hidden side of most exits. The emotional aftermath no one warned you about. And that's what we're talking about today. Why the final price isn't the most important term. And what actually separates an exit to excellence from an expensive mistake. See, when you spent years building something from nothing, it's easy to measure your success in dollars. But money isn't the finish line, it's just one of the mile markers on the journey. The real question isn't, what did I sell it for? It's what did I keep? Did you keep your freedom? Did you keep your sense of purpose? Do you have meaningful relationships? What about peace of mind? Because if the answer to those is no, the deal wasn't a win. So, in this episode, we're going to break down what most founders miss when they're chasing the number. We'll explore the four hidden levers that matter more than price: structure, timing, control, and alignment. And we'll reframe what it actually means to win the exit game. If you're thinking about selling, negotiating, or even dreaming about the day when you can finally excel, this conversation might save you years of regret. Because when it comes to the exit, the biggest number isn't always the best outcome. And the most important term isn't the written check, it's what's written in your life after the deal closes. So I want to start with a story. Let's call him James. He built a technology company over 15 years, from a one person idea in his garage to a 70-person organization, serving thousands of customers. He poured everything into it: his energy, his relationship, his health. And when the opportunity to sell came, the offer was massive: 38 million. For the first time, he felt like all the sacrifices were finally going to pay off. The number was life changing. At least that's what he thought. But here's what no one told him: the number that shows up in the headline isn't the number that shows up in your bank account. When the dust settled after taxes, escrow, and an earnout tied to performance metrics he didn't fully control, the amount he could actually use was less than half. Still, he told himself, it's fine. I'll make it up in the next phase. Except the next phase wasn't what he expected. The new owners changed the company culture. His title changed. His authority disappeared. He went from being a visionary to being a middle manager of his own dream. And within 6 months, the fire that fueled him for years was gone. When we finally talked, he said something that struck me. Jerome, I thought I sold my company for freedom, but what I really did was sell my freedom for a number. That's the illusion of the headline number. Founders get trapped because it's visible, measurable, and easy to brag about. We've been taught that success equals scale, that growth equals greatness, and that when you sell for the biggest number, you've won the game. But what if the scoreboard you're looking at is wrong? What if the number everyone celebrates actually hides the compromises you made to get there? That's part of the founder's exit paradox. It's the paradox in action, the gap between what looks like winning and what actually feels like it. Because behind every big headline, there's a fine print that determines how the win translates into your next chapter. Here's what I learned watching founders go through this process. The dollar amount is rarely the cause of their regret. It's what the number came with. It's the golden handcuffs that kept them tied to the organization they no longer realize. It's the earnout targets that depend on other people's performance. It's the loss of identity that hits when the wire clears and the calendar suddenly opens up to nothing. You can hit your financial goal and still miss your life goal. And if you don't define what winning looks like beyond the transaction, someone else will define it for you, probably in a term sheet. When you're deep in negotiations, your advisors will talk to you about valuation. They'll show you charts, comps, multiples. They'll tell you what your business is worth. But here's the truth no one says out loud. They're valuing your business, not your peace of mind. They're optimizing for the transaction, not for your transformation. And that's why you have to pause before you chase the number. Because once you sign, the number becomes a mirror, reflecting not just the deal you made, but the story you told yourself about what mattered most. So if the number isn't the ultimate measure of success, what is? What should founders really be looking at when they're evaluating an offer? In this next segment, we're going to unpack the hidden levers that matter more than price, the ones that determine not just how much you get, but how much you keep, how much you control, and how free you feel when the deal is done. Because the final price might close the deal, but the terms define your legacy. So let's talk about what really drives the quality of your exit and your life after it. So let's dig into the structure. How you get paid matters more than what you're paid. Structure is the skeleton of every deal. It's how the money moves. Most founders focus on valuation, but seasoned operators know it's the structure that determines how much you really take home and when. Is it an asset sale or stock sale? Are you earning it out or is it all cash up front? Rollover equity, seller financing, retention bonuses. Every choice carries risk, reward, and some responsibility. Let me give you a story. Maria sold her med tech company for $24 million. She rolled over 30% of her equity into the new entity because her buyer promised shared upside. 2 years later, the parent company changed direction. The new CEO spun off the division and revalued the shares at a 40% discount. Her $7 million rollover was now worth less than $4 million. And she had to say her $7 million rollover was now worth less than $4 million. And she had no say in it. She told me, I traded cash for control and I didn't even know it. The deal structure turned her freedom into a future she didn't control. So when you're negotiating, remember, the terms that look sophisticated on paper can be the traps that limit your choices later. Ask, what part of the payment depends on someone else's performance? If the answer is anything more than zero, you should proceed with caution because you've had the ball in your hands while you were the founder and the owner. Now you're relying on somebody else's score. Then there's timing. The calendar is a hidden cost of every deal. A deal might look lucrative in total dollars, but if the payments are stretched over years, you're financing your own exit. I worked with a founder who sold for about 10 mil, half up front, half over 3 years. On paper, that looked fair. In reality, the buyer restructured within 18 months and second payments evaporated in arbitration. She said, I thought I made it, but my freedom was on layaway. When you're designing your exit, think of timing like oxygen. You can survive with less of it for a while, but it determines how alive you actually feel after the deal. So, when you're looking at timing, you want to know how soon can I access my proceeds? What are the tax implications of when I receive them? And how long am I tied to post close obligations before I can truly move on? The difference between a good deal and a great one isn't the size of the payout, it's the speed of peace. Control is an invisible term that founders often overlook. They assume that once they sell, they'll finally be free. But freedom isn't automatic, it's negotiated. Let's look at David's story. He sold a logistics firm to a private equity group. He thought he'd stay for 12 months to help with the transition and step away. But his employment agreement had performance clauses tied to continued contribution. Language that kept him on the hook indefinitely. 3 years later, he was still there, miserable and resentful. He told me, they didn't steal my company. I gave it away one clause at a time. You can sell 100% of your shares and still be owned by a business emotionally if you didn't protect your autonomy. That's why I tell every founder before you sign, define what freedom looks like for you. Is it time freedom, decision freedom, emotional freedom, location freedom? Because if you don't specify, the buyer will, and their definition is highly unlikely to match yours. And then the fourth one, there's alignment. This is a silent killer or multiplier of every exit. Money can hide misalignment for a while, but not forever. If the buyer's values, mission, and leadership styles don't match yours, regret is inevitable. I remember one founder who sold her boutique agency to a global marketing firm. She loved her team, small, tight knit, deeply loyal. Within 6 months, the acquirer imposed new KPIs that forced her people into burnout. The company name stayed, but the soul disappeared. She walked away early saying, they didn't just buy my company, they erased my purpose. That's why alignment is more than a handshake. It's a culture, communication, and shared philosophy. Before you sell, ask yourself, can I see myself celebrating with these people a year after the deal closes? If the answer is no, the price doesn't matter because the cost will show up and they will always be far greater than you believe them to be. So here's the truth. Every founder I've met who regrets their exit can trace that regret back to one of four levers being out of balance. They optimize for price but ignore structure. They chased the deal but missed the timing. They gained wealth but lost control. They built legacy but forgot about alignment. And when the wire hit, they realized they'd sold more than just a company. They sold a piece of themselves. So how do you avoid that trap? How do you redefine what winning looks like, not just financially, but emotionally, relationally, and spiritually? In the next segment, we'll talk about reframing the definition of success, shifting from how much did I make to how aligned am I with who I'm becoming. Because a true exit to excellence isn't about maximizing price, it's about maximizing peace. By now, we've reframed what winning really means. We've peeled back the illusion of the headline number and looked at the hidden layers: structure, timing, control, and alignment. But insight without action doesn't change outcomes. So let's make this practical. Let's talk about how to operationalize this mindset, how to make sure that when you walk away from the table, you're not just richer, but freer. Before you look at any offer, you need clarity on what you will and will not compromise. Your non negotiables list is a personal term sheet. It's written by you and your values, not by attorneys. Here's what goes in it: your freedom requirements. How much time do you want back? What responsibilities are you unwilling to keep post exit? Financial minimums. What's the true number? Your true freedom number that allows you to achieve your next chapter goals. Not the vanity number, not the headline number. After taxes and fees, I need X to live the life I want in my next chapter. Legacy and integrity. What must remain true about your people, your brand, or your mission after the sale? Once you write that list, it becomes your compass in every negotiation. When the pressure mounts, this list keeps you anchored in principle, not impulse. If you don't define your non negotiables, someone else will, and they'll write them into your deal, and it won't be for your benefit. Every offer looks great in Excel, but spreadsheets don't measure peace. That's why I encourage founders to run every potential deal through the Freedom Compass filter. Ask yourself these four questions. Number one, will this deal give me more or less control over my time? Number two, will it deepen or distance me from the people I love? Number three, does it move me closer to meaningful work or just another contract? And number four, does it fund my next chapter sustainably or just temporarily? If an offer only checks the financial box, it's incomplete. Because you're not selling a company, you're trading a chapter of your life. And your life deserves the full spectrum return, not just a single line item. Now, you may be thinking, what else should I be thinking about, Jerome? Here we go. Most founders lose leverage not because they lack intelligence, but because they ask the wrong questions. They ask, what's my valuation? Instead of, what's the cost of the structure? What's the cost of this structure to my future self? Here are questions that separate tactical founders from strategic ones. What assumptions drive this earnout target? And can I influence them? Who controls the capital stack post close? What are the tax consequences of this payout structure? If I were advising my future self, what would I warn me about in this deal? If I were advising my future self, what would I warn me about in this deal? Those questions don't reveal just numbers, they reveal power. And the founder who understands power dynamics in a transaction wins every time. Got a couple of more here. Before you sign a term sheet, return before you sign a term sheet, run a quick self audit. Let's talk about, are you emotionally ready to let go? Do I know what I'm walking toward, not just what I'm walking away from? Have I aligned my advisors financially, legally, emotionally around the same direction? Have I aligned my advisors financially, legally, emotionally around the same definition of success? Most people prepare their business for exit. The great ones prepare their identity. That's why at Exit to Excellence, we use exit readiness assessment. 7 areas that reveal whether you're strategically and psychologically ready to transition, because clarity now prevents chaos later. When you integrate these tools, the non-negotiable is the freedom compass, the exit readiness check. You stop reacting to offers and start designing outcomes. You stop letting people define what success looks like and start writing your own definition of success. And that's the real goal of this work, to help you transition with clarity, confidence, and peace, not just liquidity. When we started this conversation, I told you about James, the founder who sold for 38 million and ended up feeling trapped in the very freedom he thought he'd earned. He didn't get there because he was greedy or careless. He got there because he did what almost every founder does. He chased the number, not the meaning. And that's what makes this work so personal for me, because I've watched so many brilliant people cross the finish line of their professional lives only to realize they've been running the wrong race. The transition closed, but the transition never started. If you've ever sat across from a buyer with a deal on the table and their adrenaline pumping, you know how intoxicating it can feel. The spreadsheet glows, the advisors nod, everyone tells you it's your moment. And in that rush, you forget the simple truth. The final price doesn't buy you peace, the terms do. And peace is priceless. In all the years I've worked with founders, I've never once heard someone say, I wish I sold for more. But I have heard, I wish I'd taken more time. I wish I'd protected my team. I wish I'd known what I wanted next. Those aren't financial regrets, they're human ones. Because when the wire clears and the dust settles, what's left isn't the deal. It's the distance between who you were and who you become. And that distance can feel lonely if you don't prepare for it. That's the founder's exit paradox, realizing that the freedom you chase externally can only be fulfilled internally. But here's the good news: the exit doesn't have to be an ending, it can be a portal, one that leads to deeper peace, purpose, and presence. When you sell your business, you're not closing a chapter, you're stepping into a new one that you get to write on purpose. You're not transferring ownership, you're transferring identity. And if you do it with intention, if you negotiate with alignment instead of approval, and for peace instead of applause, the next chapter can be your best one yet. That's what exiting to excellence is about. Not escaping something, but evolving into someone. When I went through my own version of the exit, not just in business, but in life, I learned that the hardest part isn't letting go of what you built, it's learning to believe that you can build it again. Because when you've spent your years being the founder, you start to confuse what you do with who you are. But the truth is, you've always been more than the title, the deal, the valuation. You're the dreamer who started it all. You're the leader who turned vision into value. And you're the person who gets to decide what comes next. If this conversation hit home for you, if you're starting to realize that the next big move might be internal and not external, I want you to take one simple step. Go to exit-to-excellence.com/ERA and take the exit readiness assessment. It's short, powerful, and it's the tool that helps you see where you are emotionally, financially, and strategically ready for your transition. Because clarity before the exit is what creates peace after it. And if you've already exited, but something still feels incomplete, take the NEO assessment. NEO stands for Newly Exited Operator. It helps you discover who you are now and what freedom looks like for you in the new season. The final price might close the deal, but the terms define your legacy. Don't sell for a number that looks good. Negotiate for the life that feels right. Because at the end of the day, the company was never the dream, it was a vehicle for it. And your dream deserves to be real. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.